Hi, and welcome back. Today, I want to share more of the story of how I ended up in Austin, Texas. I moved here from Wisconsin, and I have a medical condition called fibromyalgia, which is made much, much worse in damp, cold weather, which is pretty much 7 months out of the year in Wisconsin. But in April of 2019, I think it was, we had had wet, heavy snowstorm after snowstorm after snowstorm that ran all the way into April. And my son had had 11 snow days in 2 months. And that's more snow days than I think I ever had in all 4 years of high school. It was a really brutal winter. So my pain levels were really bad. My depression was terrible. And I ended up laying on the floor of my walk-in closet, crying my eyes out and feeling like I was never, ever going to feel better because I had felt that way. I had felt that deep depression for a really long time, about a decade. And so I asked myself, like, what's one thing that I could do today that would make me feel better? That might bring me out of this deep, dark hole that I was in. And the only thing I could think of was one thing. A one-way plane ticket to Austin, Texas, to stay with my friend Julie, because she offered me her spare room. That was the only thing I could come up with. A one-way plane ticket. And that actually did give me a little bit of brightness and hope. So I got up off my closet floor and I went to the computer, but instead of purchasing a plane ticket, I made an appointment with a counselor because I didn't want to run away from my problems. But I knew I needed a better life. And I needed some help to get there. And I worked with that counselor for about a year, and what she had determined was that the source of my depression was the fact that none of my needs were being met in my relationships. My relationships with my good friends were solid, but my relationships with my family, and especially with my husband at the time, was not. Now, my husband is a very, very nice man, patient and kind, and I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't want to disrupt my family. It was the last thing I wanted to do was to hurt other people. But I myself was hurting. And for years I had chosen my own hurt in order to avoid hurting other people. Somehow I needed to come to the understanding that my life is also important to God. And how I feel and live and move in the world is important to God. It's just as important as the other people in my life. And that was a really hard realization to come to. So fast forward a couple of years to the fall of 2021. By that time, I had worked with 2 different counselors, both of whom came to the same conclusion, that none of my needs were being met emotionally, spiritually, mentally. I was just empty. I wasn't feeling anything anymore because when I did feel things, it hurt. So I chose to be numb instead. Some people say that depression is unprocessed anger. And maybe that's true. My second counselor said to me, he said, do you know what the difference between, what's the opposite of depression? And I said, well, I suppose the opposite of depression is happiness. And he said, no. The opposite of depression is connection. Connection to yourself, connection to others, connection to God. I have always been a really happy person. And I remember my mom used to say that when I was little, and my dad said this too, when I was little, when I walked into a room, I would just light up the room. I had this 1,000,000-watt smile, and I was happy, and I would dance, and I would bring joy to other people, and I was so not that person anymore. I lost her somewhere along the way, and I needed to get her back because her life, my life, is just as important as anyone else's, and so is yours. It's a hard choice to make when you have to choose yourself over other people, and my religion had taught me that that's the exact opposite of what we should be doing, that we should be suffering for other people, that we should be sacrificing for other people, that we should always put others before ourselves. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, love God with all you've got. Body, mind, heart, soul. Just love God with all you've got. And love your neighbor as yourself. Not more than yourself. Not less than yourself. So in order to love other people, you also need to love yourself. And that's the journey I've been on, is learning how to love myself the way that God loves me. And in future episodes, we're going to talk about how I managed to allow God to lead me to greener pastures, to a brighter world, to more sunshine. I've become my authentic self. Not who other people wanted me to be, but my real, true self. And it's the biggest gift that I have ever given to myself. So give yourself a little bit of love today, and join me again as we walk through this journey together, learning how to be brave and move from surviving to thriving. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.